Julia, and I help people with female reproductive systems navigate their unique journeys through education and empowerment. Today, I want to come to talk about a rather sensitive subject, postpartum depression. And part of why I feel like now is a really good time to talk about postpartum depression is in light of Meghan Markle's interview with Oprah and her transparency with her journey, and then just walking with friends and clients and recognizing the signs and symptoms of postpartum depression and allowing folks the space to talk about their own journeys and or not to. And so I just wanted to drop some nuggets of wisdom and some informational bits about what PPD even is, things that we should be looking out for in terms of signs and symptoms, and then what we should do. So if we have a diagnosis, or if we feel like a loved one has a diagnosis that has not yet been diagnosed, how do we make sure that that they're receiving the support that they need? So postpartum depression, what is it? Firstly, it's not your fault. It's nobody's fault when people experience postpartum depression. And I want to be very clear that I mean experience, not are depressed people, because I'm a social worker, and always it is something that is happening to us or within our experience, not who we are. So that definition and that clarity means that there is something that someone is experiencing that is part of what's going on in their life. So one, it's not your fault. It is a medical condition. So depression, anxiety, any of the, and name any of them, any of the perinatal disorders, as they are so called, are medical conditions and require medical support. So it's not that anybody, did anything during the baby's birth or during their pregnancy to make them experience postpartum depression. It's not that it's not anyone's fault. Honestly, it's a combination of genetic predisposition. So some people are more prone to anxiety and depression, and when they are in the postpartum phase, then that means that we need to be looking out for postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression within their experience. There's another thing called hormones, and I will never be able to rant and rave enough about knowing hormones, understanding them, and having an empowered understanding of how they impact us, because hormones, when you are going through the postpartum period, are up and down. And when you're pregnant, they're up and down. And if you have female reproductive system, they're up and down. If you're a human being, your hormone levels just go up and down. So it's really important to acknowledge that when we're in the postpartum phase, your body has essentially gotten this hormone dip because the placenta is gone, the baby's now out of your body, and it needs to re-regulate. And sometimes when people are going through that re-regulation process, it's more frustrating, it's more painful than for other people. And I say painful, it's not always physically painful, but it can be physically painful. Hormones impact milk supply levels, they impact our levels of exhaustion or fatigue. They impact whether or not we're interested in doing things in our life, whether or not we're eating, whether or not we're gaining weight or losing weight. So hormones are very important, and hormones play a big role in whether or not somebody will develop postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety. But we're focusing on postpartum depression today. So I want to also note that it is extremely common. 1 in 7 to 9 actually folks who've given birth are likely to develop signs of postpartum depression. So like I said, it's not anyone's fault. It is a medical condition, and it's very common. So there should not be any shame around postpartum depression. Now, when we are experiencing postpartum depression, it may not always be easy to recognize what it is. And so I'd like to point out some signs and symptoms. Signs are things that other people see about you or how you're going through life, and symptoms are things that we feel ourselves. So signs of postpartum depression and symptoms would be seen or experienced for 2 weeks or more. And that's different from baby blues, where it's probably it could be 2 to 3 days after the baby's born that you start to see signs of fatigue, of lack of interest, or just feeling exhausted, not really wanting to eat or eating too much, things like that. But that will typically stop within a week to 10 days. Anything lasting 14 days or longer, that's what we consider signs and symptoms of postpartum depression. And so signs that we would want to look for are changes in 3 areas, and that would be your feelings, your life, and thoughts about yourself or the baby. So when we think about changes in feeling, we think about thoughts that plague our mind, like that create a sense of shame or guilt, or feeling as if everything you do means you're a failure, or everything you don't do means you're a failure. Feeling constantly in a panic mode, or feeling constantly afraid that something's going to happen to baby, having racing thoughts and racing, heartbeat. Or even mood swings. So it might be that one moment you feel good and then the next you dip and you feel terrible, and that happens repeatedly. So those would be things to look out for. Those are symptoms because you would experience them, not necessarily because someone else will see that. But things that other people might see might be the changes in your lifestyle. And those can include a loss of interest in things that you normally get excited to do or to be a part of, constantly feeling tired, which, yes, is part of having a newborn. I don't take that for granted. At the same time, if you never have any energy burst, if you are feeling, getting like, the big bags under your eyes, if you're feeling like there's never enough time or energy, I can't get enough sleep, I have to drag myself out of bed every single day, every hour of the day, that's something that we would be concerned about. Once again, eating. If you're eating, your weight or your sleep are either really, really high or really, really low, those are also signs of postpartum depression that somebody else can see and might be able to comment on. So maybe you have a really strong support system and you have people in your life who can bring you meals, or can take the baby for you to take a nap, or for you to take a shower, things like that. And they might notice, like, hey, you didn't touch much today, or, you're eating ravenously. Is everything okay? Are you hungry? Like, what do you need? Or seeing your weight go up and down, like I mentioned, or the lack of sleep or too much sleep. But having somebody around to notice those signs is really helpful. And we'll talk about, some more things that can be helpful, but those will be some of the main signs of changes in your lifestyle. And I'd also like to note that sometimes it can be that concentrating is very difficult. So there is such thing as a baby brain where you're going about life and you're like, oh wait, let me pause for a second. The baby's taking all my energy. It's very different when you cannot focus at all on either a task at hand or remember what it was you're about to do on a repeated basis where it seems to disrupt your lifestyle. That would be a change in lifestyle. The last thing that we talk about in terms of signs and symptoms are changes in your thought patterns about yourself or your baby. And so that can look like having difficulty bonding with baby. It could look like having thoughts about hurting yourself or hurting the baby. It could also look like suicidal ideation and thoughts. And pulling this back to the conversation between Meghan Markle and Oprah and Prince Harry, he was there too. And her, even, when her son Archie was first born, talking about nobody asked if I was okay. Nobody asked how I'm doing, and I'm experiencing depression. And suicidal thoughts are very real. And so if you get to the place where you are feeling as if I don't want to live anymore, I don't want to be here anymore, hearing things or thought patterns like everybody would be better if I wasn't here, those are all things that we need to note as suicidal thoughts, and those require support. So I don't take those lightly. I believe that when we are experiencing those thoughts and either as one time or within patterns, it's very important to seek help because your life does matter. You are important, and the world is a better place because you're here. We would miss you. And there's so much more on the other side of this journey. But in order to get there, you need some support, and there's nothing wrong with that.